Treaty of Versailles takes effect, officially ending World War I. League of Nations is formed. Spanish flu is also over, taking an estimated 17 million to 50 million people with it. It was the last global pandemic until the swine flu of 2009 and then COVID in 2020, which is interesting when you think about it. The year is 1920, and this overhead valve 6 was produced by Nash. But before getting into all of it, I'm Jay. Welcome to What It's Like, the automotive channel that dives in deep on all of the cars from a world gone away. We cover the classics, vintage, some exotics. We love the orphan cars, brands like Nash, Hudson, Studebaker, Packard, Cord, Pierce Arrow, Hupmobile, AMC, DeSoto, Pontiac. Dive in deep on the history, specs, button switches, and knobs. And most importantly, show what these cars are like. If that sounds like a channel that you will totally dig, subscribe and hit the bell icon next to it to never miss a video. I found this 1920 Nash 687 Sport Touring. It was part of the Old Car Festival at the Greenfield Village in Dearborn, Michigan. Let me tell you, this place is a bucket list thing to do. If you're into cars, owners love sharing their vintage rides and even letting you experience these for what they were. It really takes you back because it's a period correct town. Many people dress period correct. Mark your calendars next year. It's always the weekend after Labor Day. 1920 Nash model lineup. But before getting into all of that, a bit of background on Nash Motors. The story actually starts with a guy by the name of Thomas B. Jeffrey, the company that built the original Rambler. As the story goes, his son, Charles T. Jeffrey, took control of the company when his father, Thomas B., died in 1910. The U.S. Army was Jeffrey's best customer during the war years. The Jeffrey Quad was the workhorse of the Allied forces, dropping Rambler Mark in 1914 in favor of Jeffrey. Charles Jeffrey would travel to France to discuss a contract for sale of some armored vehicles they were building at the time. He made the journey on the Lusitania. While on the Lusitania, Charles got acquainted with Thomas Silva, who was a cotton broker. Both Jeffrey and Silva were in the smoking room when the torpedo hit. Jeffrey survived, Silva didn't. It totally gutted Jeffrey to the point he reevaluated his priorities in life. When he got home, he put the Jeffrey Company up for sale. The factory and lakeside commercial property in Kenosha, Wisconsin was purchased by Charles Nash, who was a key player in the early days of General Motors. He was actually the 5th president of General Motors, Charlie Nash was. But around 1915, there was a bit of a power struggle between the bankers and a guy by the name of Billy Durant. Durant would regain control and offered Nash to stay with the company with $1 million salary. Charlie Nash resigned after that whole debacle. Nash made a promise to himself that he will never work for somebody like that ever again. Nash and a few other GM executive misfits such as James J. Storrow and Walter P. Chrysler attempted a Packard takeover, but that dissolved. Nash heard about the Jeffrey Company going up for sale, and he pulled the trigger on that deal with a down payment of $500,000 towards the deal. $5 million deal. Some reports say as high as $9 million, but by July of 1916, freshly incorporated Nash Motors was worth $24 million in capital stock. And by 1919, they built and sold 31,008 cars and trucks. Very interesting side note. So Nash would produce the Jeffrey Quad, which dates back to 1913. It was a four-wheel drive vehicle, making Nash the largest producer of four-wheel drive vehicles in 1918. Page Detroit Motor Car would get patents to produce the Jeffrey Quad because Nash was running out of space to build the Jeffrey Quad. The Jeffrey Quad would be phased out in 1928 with 41,674 units built. Charlie Nash brought over some talent from GM, like engineer Wahlberg, who designed the first Nash car. 1920 Nash model lineup. Nash offered the 4 and the 6. The 6 could be had as a sedan, coupe, touring car, roadster, and the sports model, which our car is. Let's talk specs. It rides a wheelbase of 116 inches. It weighs around 2,851 pounds. Price $1,850, which is equivalent to you spending $28,470.48 in the year 2023. Total Nash 1920 production, I could not find a figure on that, but Sport Touring, they only built 13 of these. Moving on to engine, only one engine on offer, 261.3 cubic inch displacement, overhead valve, inline 6, 4.2 liters. It's good for 25 horsepower at 2,600 RPM, 50 pound-feet, or 68 Newton meters at 1,800 RPM, with a bore of 3 1/4 inch and a stroke of 5 1/4 inch, backed by a 3-speed manual transmission. Let's talk styling. Look at these fenders. Look at how they slope down. Just look at that profile. It's not all...
Where's 285?
Check out these fenders and how they come down. Notice this car does not have bumpers. Look at these. Just check out the grille and the lights. They are nickel. Coming around to the side, Hayes spoke wheels, luggage rack. Notice all of the pinstriping on the louvers and the cowl, as well as around the passenger compartment. Nash textured running plates, single brake lights with spare wheel. Notice there are no bumpers in the back either. Also notice the 2 oval rear windows made of real glass with nickel trim around them. On to the button switches and knobs, starting on the left and moving right. On and off switch for something I'm not entirely sure. It's either for the accessory lights on the cowl or the panel lights in the dash. Oil pressure. On the steering wheel, the horn is in the center. Advanced and retard spark advanced, hand throttle. Key is in the center of the headlight switch. Dim and on. It's sort of like Willis setup. Amp meter. I think close after starting is the choke, actual panel light, speedometer, odometer, and tripometer inside of it, pull out lighter, and clock. So there it is, overhead valve 6, steering rack, fuel pump, carburetor, oil can on the firewall, horn, starter, coil. Just check out how all these wires are in this tube to make it nice and neat. The water pump, is it chain drive or
it runs off the cam?
Sweet. The generator?
Yep.
And the fan is all one?
The bolts to it, yeah.
Oh wow, I never saw that. That's crazy. Is this the only car you have?
No, we have another 1920 Nash. We have a 681 that I have not restored yet. And the 687, like I said, they only made 13 of them, and this is the only one known in existence.
Wow.
With this body style and trim package. You know, like you got the mahogany, you got the nickel, you got the Hayes rims. If you look at other most standard Nashes, they got a stamped steel dash.
They also made a straight 8 with for you. And I was thinking more like that. On the positive side, overhead valve engine. These are super cool, very rare and different. Draws a crowd because of how rare and different they are. Against it, the floor to seat ratio isn't great, but a lot of cars from this era have that problem. Also has tiny doors and tight turning radius. All right, now it's time for Would You Rather, 2 scenarios today. In the first scenario, would you rather have a 1920 Chandler or 1920 Nash or 1920 Rickenbacker. I'm going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free. Pause the video. On to the second scenario. 1920 Page or 1920 Nash or 1920 Jordan. Once again, I'm going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. Now it's time for Name That Tune. First person to get both the name of the band and the song title correctly in the comment section will have their comment pinned to the top of it. Thank you all so much for coming out and watching this. If you'd like to get in touch with me, shoot me a comment in the comment section below, or check out our Facebook group that correlates with this YouTube channel. If you don't have Facebook or would like to send me something more private, send me an email. All of that information will be linked in the description below. Just know I do really appreciate everything that you guys bring in the comment section. I totally dig reading the stories. And until next time, toodaloo!